Even before Jackie left, there was tension in the room, but nobody could have foreseen the commotion she would cause. It was more than a casual comment or a cryptic hint made in front of a live audience while the cameras were rolling. The breath seemed to be drawn out of the room by the collective gasp of the audience as she spoke. For weeks, there had been rumors of late-night meetings and abrupt disappearances, but nothing solid had surfaced until now. Jackie's face didn't flinch, and her voice didn't waver. To make sure everyone saw who she was referring to, she glanced first at Evelyn and then at Chantel. A dot. After that, it was said that the two women were expecting. And from the same individual whose name has been lurking in the background of every discussion, not just from anybody. It was an immediate shock. Evelyn's eyes grew wide, but she kept her gaze fixed on it. Chantal hesitated, her mouth opening to speak, but no sound emerged. Instantly, phones rang and flashed as onlookers rushed to record the mayhem. Later, fans on the internet claimed to be able to feel the heat emanating from the stage through their televisions. The family was left split in a way that seemed nearly impossible to mend as emotions ran high. This wasn't merely a dramatic moment. It was the type of a potentially flaming revelation. As the crowd held its breath, Jackie stood in the center of the stage like she owned it, her heels clicking against the wooden floor with each purposeful step. Her eyes were unwavering, and her voice was devoid of any hint of uncertainty. The woman sitting a few feet away from her was about to say something that would completely alter their relationship. With her arms crossed and her jaw clenched as if she were preparing for impact, Evelyn sat. In contrast, Chantel appeared unusually motionless. Her eyes were locked on the ground as if she had anticipated it since everyone had been whispering to one another behind their backs. Why don't we just lay it out here for everyone to see? Jackie's comments broke through the crowd's mutter. People tend to lean forward in their seats as soon as they hear this type of sentence. As everyone turned to watch how the two women would react, the silence in the room changed to a low murmur. Jackie then uttered it. She didn't skirt the reality, didn't lessen the impact. Evelyn and Chantel were both expecting, and it was from the same man, she stated bluntly. The vibration through the throng was immediate. Some gasped loud enough to be heard over the microphones, while others spoke to the person next to them with wide-eyed incredulity. The tension was almost tangible, heavy enough to make even the crew behind the cameras glance at each other uncomfortably. Evelyn's lips twisted into the tiniest grin, but that wasn't amusement. It was the kind of expression that covers both wrath and planning. When Chantel did look up, she briefly met Evelyn's gaze before slowly shaking her head, seemingly to avoid acknowledging the occasion. The words, "You're lying," Chantel said to herself. However, her voice was steady when it was picked up by microphones, but her hands conveyed a different message. As though she was frantic to let go of the energy that was rising inside of her, they shifted around in her lap and twisted the rings on her fingers. Instead of responding immediately, Evelyn leaned back in her chair and allowed the tension to work to her advantage. Silence as a weapon was a power move. Evelyn finally said something. Her tone was severe enough to cause the crowd to mutter, "I don't know what game you think you're playing, Jackie, but you really should be careful about throwing out accusations without proof." Once more. Jackie, however, didn't falter. She took a step towards the women and gestured with a finger. "I don't need proof for you two. You are aware of the truth." "Not yet." She did not mention the man's name, but everyone in the room knew who she was referring about. Last month, he was seen at a charity gala with Evelyn. Additionally, fans started making connections online weeks ago when Chantel left for a late-night dinner 2 weeks prior, assembling screenshots with cryptic titles, locations that correspond, and hand motions that are partially hidden in pictures. Nobody had anticipated that those theories would be validated, or at the very least put into the public front in such a dramatic manner. A strong red flush came over Chantal's cheeks. However, it was also impossible to tell if it was anger or embarrassment. She finally turned to Evelyn and said, "Tell me, this is disgusting. Say it to me, not via her, if you have anything to say." Some were taken aback by the candor. Evelyn looked back at her with a seemingly practiced composure. "Is this what you truly want me to say? All right. I don't dispute our involvement. However, don't pretend that you were unaware of it from the beginning. The audience let out a thunderous gasp. Jackie even arched an eyebrow, obviously pleased that her spark had ignited a fire that was difficult for either woman to extinguish. Chantel's mouth opened for a second, then closed again. As if looking for a way out, her gaze darted to the side of the stage. "And you both really think he's going to stick around for either of you once this goes public?" That was a challenge, and a taunt. And Jackie, who was enjoying the turmoil, added, "And you both really think he's going to stick around for either of you once this goes public?" Awkward tension gave way to a heated atmosphere on stage. Evelyn sat forward, straightened her clothes, and looked directly at Chantel. Evelyn remarked in a quiet but forceful voice, "You're not going to make me feel guilty for something you've been doing yourself. You believe that your silence gives you some moral superiority? No, this has to do with control, and you despise the fact that you lack it." Without wasting a beat, he shot back. "Command. You believe that having sex with someone who is with me is a sign of control. That is despair, not hope. You took it like you always do because you couldn't stand that I had what you wanted." It was a frank exchange. There was years of underlying tension in every phrase. Audience members shifted in their chairs, with some covering their mouths in amazement and others straining forward to hear every word. Not even the crew was able to conceal their expressions. As if they realized this clip would go viral in a matter of seconds, one camera operator bit back a smile while another shook his head slightly. Although the individual in issue was nowhere to be seen, the noise of the remarks being flung on stage was nearly as loud as his absence. The possibility that he might be observing from off-camera just added to the mood. Electric. Jackie, who was still between them, appeared to take far more pleasure in the mayhem than anybody else. "What's very humorous, you know?" Her tone was brimming with satirical sweetness as she spoke. "You both believe that this is about him, but in reality, it's about who will look better when it airs." Evelyn gave a little laugh that sounded anything but amused, and Chantel snorted and rolled her eyes. Evelyn responded, "Trust me," and leaned back once more. Chantel said, "I don't need to play games to come out on top." Her voice raised slightly, as her displeasure started to show, her serene demeanor. The audience responded once more, the sound of the commotion echoing off the walls. Keep telling yourself that because when the truth comes out about what you've been hiding, you're going to wish you'd kept quiet. Evelyn's eyes narrowed, indicating that the jab had taken effect, but her smirk reappeared. Seeing that she had already added too much fuel to the fire, Jackie took a little step back, allowing the two women to confront one another directly. The scene was captured in crisp frames that would be repeatedly viewed on the internet when the cameras zoomed in. Jackie's strategic disclosure had escalated into a full-scale confrontation. It was about pride, image, and the ability to steer the conversation before the other person did, and it wasn't just about a relationship. And it became evident as the seconds passed that neither woman intended to back down. After Chantel's final comments, there was a thick, weighty silence that made the room feel cramped and nearly oppressive. This silence wasn't quiet. Evelyn's fingertips delicately tapped her knee, and you could see it. Every time her nails clicked, it was like a countdown to something nobody was prepared for. Chantel refused to blink as though any hint of hesitancy would be interpreted, keeping her gaze fixed on her as a sign of weakness. Hovering at the brink of their tense stare-down, Jackie cocked her head as if she was waiting for the room to blow up. Evelyn then leaned closer and spoke in a low voice that was piercing enough to cut through the atmosphere. "Chantel, you speak about the truth as if you own it. However, since the beginning of this, you have been giving false information. Do you want to discuss the late evenings you spent in his vehicle? Or how, after learning about me, you continued to text him?" She wasn't shouting. She didn't have to. Her voice held the burden of a person who knew just where to hit. Chantel's jaw tensed, but her gaze remained fixed. "Don't act as though you were taken by surprise. You were aware that he and I were not done yet. You didn't care that you knew what you were getting into. That speaks louder for you than for me." Her breathing showed that she was short, yet her voice was steady. Cut her breaths as if she were trying to contain herself so the audience wouldn't notice. The tension was broken by a few gasps and then a few whispers. In a desperate attempt to capture every moment of this unraveling, phones were suddenly hoisted higher, Slowly shaking her head, one woman in the front row mouthed something that looked a lot like "This is wild" to the person next to her. Sensing she might intensify the moment, Jackie moved back into the middle. She paused, allowing the implications to sink in. "What's really interesting," she added, "is that neither of you seem all that surprised." Hurt? Sure, angry obviously, but surprised not one bit. She was shot by Evelyn, the kind of glare that said, "Stay out of it." However, Jackie was not one to remain quiet in front of a crowd. Perhaps his current partner isn't the true tale. "How long has this been happening behind closed doors, Lutz?" Chantel stiffened her shoulders. "You're painting it as a convoluted, lengthy plot when in fact it's far more straightforward. He told us both lies. He believed he could keep us both, pleased without us knowing, and made promises he couldn't keep. That's all." However, Evelyn refused to give her the final say. "No, Chantel. In actuality, you continued because you enjoyed the competition. You were just as nasty as the victim in all of this, so stop acting like the victim. The match was ignited by that." Chantel straightened her posture and raised the loudness of her voice. "Rivalry. He had captured my heart. I believed we had something genuine. How about you?" She gestured towards Evelyn. "When things got tough, you were the one flying around like a vulture. You didn't intend to date him. You made an effort to remove him from my possession." Evelyn laughed briefly and without humor. He was never truly yours if he could be taken. Once more, the audience burst into gasps, low whistles, and surprised laughing. The microphones picked up the grumble of one individual in the rear. Jackie crossed her arms and looked from one to the other as if she was taking score. "Damn, she went there," prompting another round of murmurs. That question hung in the air more weightily than any previous accusation. "So, if he was never really hers, Evelyn, what makes you think he's going to stay with you? Especially now." For the first time, Evelyn's sneer wavered and was replaced with a moment of doubt, which she hastily attempted to conceal. When she eventually said, "He's with me because he wants to be," her tone had lost its venom, but it was still steady. Chantel spoke softly but dangerously as she leaned in a little. "That's what he told me too." The room erupted in new screams, and then there was the desperate clicking of cameras. Despite being quiet, the cue had a powerful impact. After blinking, Evelyn slowly shook her head, sounding almost amused. "You genuinely believe you can frighten me with repurposed lines? Just demonstrating my point, please." But she was deceived by her eyes. A flash of something was visible. When you realize that you don't know the complete story, a kind of uncertainty begins to seep in. And Jackie saw it right away. Evelyn straightened her stance, obviously not wanting to give Jackie the satisfaction of witnessing her disturbed, and added softly, dragging out the phrase, "So maybe you're not as confident as you want everyone to believe." Believe what you want to believe. Jackie and I are not here to persuade you. I know where I stand, Chantel. Chantel crossed her arms in a nearly exact replica of Evelyn's position. "I am also aware of my position. It's not behind you either." The tension increased once more to the point where every little sound was echoed backstage. The crowd coughed louder than it should have. Jackie smiled slowly, as if she had just won a game that neither woman knew they were playing. The tiniest movement of a jaw muscle was captured by the cameras when they zoomed in closer. A hand's faint shake, and eyes flashed towards the way out, regardless of what would come next. Everyone was aware that it was not going to happen overnight. Jackie's final comments were followed by what seemed like an eternity of stillness. Holding their breath, the crowd awaited someone to ease the tension. The low hum of the stage lights overhead was the only sound, and the faint click of a phone camera taking pictures somewhere in the rear. Evelyn sat still, her fingers clenched around the chair's edge until her knuckles turned white. Alternatively, Chantel leaning back, she shuffled slightly, as though preparing for contact. Jackie waited, allowing the excitement to build. "See?" she said at last. "You both continue to believe that this is only about you. However, he has been dividing his time and acting carelessly and sloppily, and now his little secret is public knowledge for everyone to criticize." The audience was divided when a woman in the second row murmured, "She's bluffing," but her voice wavered, betraying the fact that she wasn't sure. Jackie was regarded by some as though she was stirring things up to get attention. Others leaned in, frantically trying to Chantel's gaze narrowed, wanting to hear more. Evelyn's breath caught as Jackie said, "I'm not implying. I'm telling you. He's been with a woman you both know, someone you've laughed with, someone you've cried with, maybe even trusted. You're talking in circles. Who is she, Jackie? Who's the someone else you're hinting at?" Jackie's lips curled into a smile that was just shy of smug. "Oh, you'll know soon enough." When Jackie said the name, the room erupted in whispers, and some people were already looking through their phones to figure it out before Jackie said it. Chantel tilted her head, her voice cold, and said, "If you're talking about who I think you're talking to, Jackie, you'd better be ready for what comes next." Jackie didn't flinch. "Oh, I'm ready, but are you?" The camera zoomed in, catching every movement of Evelyn's face. As she attempted to piece it together, her mind was racing, searching through every potential name, every friend she had in common, her eyes widened, and she turned abruptly to Chantel, who appeared perplexed. No way. Evelyn shook, her head almost laughing, but there was no humor in it. "You don't get it, do you? She's talking about her." Jackie's smile widened, and then, like a flash, she realized what she was doing. The audience's collective gasp was nearly deafening, and someone in the back actually yelled, "Shut up! You're lying. There's no way." Jackie shrugged. "Believe what you want, but I've seen the messages. I've seen the late-night calls. I've even seen the photos. And trust me, those aren't the words that were spoken." The name hadn't even been said yet, but the reaction made it clear that it was someone who mattered, someone close enough to make this revelation feel like a betrayal on multiple levels. Evelyn's face turned pale. Her hands clenched into fists at her sides, and her expression was unreadable. "If you're going to say it, Jackie, say it. Stop hiding behind your little teases." Jackie took a deep breath as if she were about to deliver a monologue she'd been practicing for weeks. "Fine, it's Ashley." The crowd erupted in shouts, curses, and disbelieving laughter. Channel's name seemed to hang in the air like smoke, heavy and impossible to ignore. Fans were shouting over each other, calling Jackie a liar, demanding proof. And phones were out everywhere, recording, streaming, and already uploading clips online. Chantel repeated, her voice cracking, "You're telling me he's been with Ashley?" Jackie nodded slowly. "And not just been with. He's been with her while being with both of you, and now Ashley's expecting too." Evelyn crossed her arms, her voice as cold as ice, and said, "And what? You just conveniently have all this information and decide to drop it now. Why, Jackie? Why here?" Jackie's gaze swept over the audience, then back to Chantel. "You don't believe me, but deep down you know he's capable of it." Single Quotes' voice trembled with anger. "You're making this up to get attention." The sound of someone in the back exclaiming, "This is insane," broke the beat of silence as they watched you two tear each other apart over a man who doesn't deserve either of you, and because perhaps, just possibly, you both need to know the truth before you ruin yourselves totally. Evelyn's lips pushed into a thin line. "Don't act like you're the only one hurt here." Chantel shook her head slowly, her eyes weeping. "If this is true, if he's been with Ashley this whole time, then I'm done. I'm done with him with all of this." Voice from the audience called out, "Jackie, show the proof," just as it appeared that the conversation might take a different turn. "He's been lying to me too." Jackie raised her eyebrows. "Then maybe for once you two should be on the same side." That suggestion seemed to hang between them, heavy and awkward. Neither woman spoke, but the tension in the air changed slightly, from pure hostility to something else, something more complicated. "Oh, I will, but not all at once." Jackie's eyes gleamed as she carefully looked around the stage. The tension had become so intense that even the crew at the sides of the stage had stopped moving, their headsets forgotten, their eyes focused on the scene unfolding. At last, Jackie reached into her bag, the soft scrape of leather loud in the silence, and pulled out a thin black folder. There was nothing ostentatious about it, nothing dramatic in its design, but the way she handled it, like it was everyone, leans in. Evelyn crossed her arms. "So, You've been carrying that around just waiting for this moment. Jackie didn't blink. Some truths can't be rushed. They have to land when they'll do the most damage. She placed the folder on the table in front of her and tapped it once, a tiny, deliberate movement that somehow made it feel heavier. This is the kind of proof you can't spin away. Chantel's eyes darted to the folder, then back to Jackie, suspicion tightening her mouth. Open it, Chantel said, her voice low but cutting dot. Jackie slowly flipped the cover back, revealing neatly stacked papers, and she pulled out the top sheet and slid it forward. It was a grainy but unmistakable screenshot from a video called The Man in Question. Ashley was sitting in the background wearing one of his hoodies, and the timestamp was recent. Jackie whispered almost to herself, "This is just the beginning." As Evelyn leaned back in her chair, her expression hardening into something unreadable, and she picked up the second page of a string of text messages full of inside jokes, pet names, and plans that lined up dangerously close to the timelines of both women. "This is too much," someone in the second row muttered under their breath, and another louder person said, "He's finished." To record the proof, phones were raised into the air, with flashes blaring like paparazzi. With a tone that wavered between incredulity and rage, Evelyn finally stated, "You've been sitting on this." The air between them vibrated with unsaid charges as Jackie responded, even in her voice, "If I told you months ago, you'd have fought me instead of seeing the truth." She had been there long enough to know when to drop it. Chantel drummed her fingers nervously and restlessly against the tabletop. Evelyn glanced at her for a moment, as though determining if they were on the same side. And then from backstage came a voice sharp enough to cleave through the noise. The full story is not being told by her. Everyone turned to face the curtain. Ashley came out with her chin up and her posture straight. She wasn't reluctant or rushed. She moved as though she had been anticipating this line the entire time. "Do you wish to discuss receipts?" As she took the platform, Ashley spoke. "Let me show you the whole picture, perhaps." Evelyn pointed a finger at her while standing halfway. "Do you believe you have the right to enter here?" Ashley grinned. "Put myself in there. I am the story you are attempting to tell, my love. To determine." Chantel's gaze grew strained. "You're acting like you won something and you're expecting his child." "I'm not feigning." Ashley fired back. "I'm not alone either. Perhaps you, Evelyn, or Chantel should tell them." She looked from one to the other, allowing the meaning to register. "Because it appears that we are all in the same predicament from where I am standing." The crowd burst out, hands over mouths, gasps, and shouts. One person cried, "No way!" while another, "They're all pregnant." Evelyn balled her hands into fists. "Do you find this adorable? You believe that it makes you appear strong to stand here and try to pull us down with you?" Ashley smiled slightly but sharply as she cocked her head. "I can't speak for him or any of you, but it makes me honest." The guards moved closer, prepared for anything. Jackie remained motionless and observed. Her face was unreadable, as if she had mentally reenacted this very scene. "What's pathetic, you know?" Ashley went on, fighting over the noise with her voice. "Someone who will never be there. We'll be here tearing each other apart while he seeks his next diversion when he leaves us all." No accusation seems to hit as hard as those words. Evelyn's stare wavered as her expression faltered. Chantal's shoulders dropped slightly as she let out a slow exhale. Dachi leaned a little forward. Perhaps that was just what had to be stated. "Perhaps you will no longer allow him to tug the strings." The crowd savored every moment, but there was no apology or resolution. Just three women standing in a tense triangle, each planning her next move. In hands and on laps, phones buzzed. News is already rushing outside the venue's borders, dragging the controversy into thousands of discussions before the altercation had even concluded. Now the stage lights appeared harsher. You were exposed by every detail. Jaws clenched, fingers shaking, eyes that refused to meet. Someone began chanting somewhere in the throng. Accusations and names are mixed together. Before long, the room was filled with sounds once more. Ashley took a step back, her calm remarked, leaving the others to choose between walking away or turning on one another. Despite the weight of what had just transpired, Evelyn and Chantel remained still. Jackie closed the folder and, just as carefully as she had taken it out, tucked it back into her bag. Silently, she added, I think that's enough truth for one night, but sufficiently loud to be heard. So that's the current situation. Backstage footage is being turned into timelines, rumors are becoming headlines, and there was a stage moment that ignited the entire internet. Recall that we are not verifying anything. Rather, we are offering perspective on the topics being discussed. Ashley's departure merely added fire to the online discussion that claims both identities are associated with the same man. Fans are taken aback. The family was split apart as a result of the intense emotions. That's what the rumors say, however. These assertions are accurate. Friendships, business dealings, and every subsequent on-camera reunion could all be altered by the aftermath. If not, someone is ruthlessly trying to get attention. The stakes feel extremely substantial in any case. It's your time now. After the stunner tonight, which side are you on? Is a joint statement necessary? Or is it time for some quiet co-parenting discussions and a clean break? Do you believe that complete receipts, public apologies, or DNA testing would make things better? Would that only exacerbate the situation? What would you do first if you were in their position? Call a physician, a lawyer, or expose the lies. Share your thoughts below. Additionally, don't be shy about your opinions. Motivate our next discussion. If you want further in-depth analyses of the purported timings, hit like. If you want us to keep your subscription, as new information becomes available, keep an eye on every angle and press the bell to be the first to know when the next twist occurs. Give this video to the friend who always finds hints that others miss. Additionally, tag us with your theories so we may highlight the most insightful ones in our follow-up. Take a screen capture of any discrepancies you find, then submit it. We're reading your receipts, keeping an eye on the rumors, and we'll be back as soon as any fresh accusations are made. Remain focused, be courteous in your comments, and let us know exactly how you believe this topic should be told.